All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Lawler, the National Security Editor for Axios. I'm here with our co-founder and CEO, Jim VandeHei, to talk about all the themes this week in Davos. Jim, thanks for making the time.
Great to be here.
Jim, you're taking a lot of meetings here in Davos. I'm curious, what are you asking people? What are you trying to take away this week? What are you hoping to learn?
I think every single conversation I've had has been about one topic, AI, not Trump, which I've been surprised by. In the past, it's been very much like people wanted to better understand the president. They just the obsession with AI is off the charts, and it's gone from being kind of a curiosity and an aspiration to like, okay, holy cow, we've got to now implement this technology quickly. That has implications on like how you're operating a company, but then also how you deal with your employees if you know that there's going to be this really fast transformation. So almost every conversation centers around that. And there's just like there's an energy this year that I haven't picked up in the last couple of years. So I think that energy comes from people know a lot of change is going on. There's a lot of deals to be done. I think there's a lot of mystery about AI, so people really just want to dig into it.
I want to come back to that energy, but you mentioned that people are talking about what this means for their workforce, AI in particular. Are they talking about we got to retrain people, we got to refocus people, or are they talking about we're going to make real changes to hiring and firing on the basis of this technology that's coming onto the market?
It's both, to be blunt. I mean, every company, almost every CEO you talk to is having the same conversation. They've kind of identified the jobs that they have that they think will be automated or done by AI. They used to think it would be in 18 months. They now think it'll be in 6 months. So they're thinking about, on the good side, they're like, this is awesome. I'm going to have greater productivity, lower cost, higher profit. But they're also AI scared. They're like, but I have to somehow implement this new technology, and it has real human cost. And whenever you're making changes with your workforce, if they're laying people off or not hiring, it takes time, takes energy, takes emotion. And I think that's what people are really wrestling with. And I do think that is what's going to define this year. It's clearly a year of AI application. I think now that anyone who started to play with Claude, especially the Opus 4.5 model, they're seeing the future very vividly, how good it is now. And they're now, I think, seeing what Silicon Valley's seen for the last year. And so that obsession and that energy is only intensifying.
Yeah, I think there's a couple layers to the conversation about AI. I think what you're talking about is the people who are, maybe see the future themselves. They can envision it. I think a lot of us are here talking about bubbles, this and that. But I think what you're pointing to is that the real decision makers, a lot of them are one or two layers beyond the basic conversations that some of us might be having about the implications of AI.
I've never in my life, I've been doing this 30 years, seen such a disconnect between something that's huge and something that like people that are running companies are obsessed about and where the general population is. It's just a massive, massive gap. And what they're seeing is just this technology that can do things that we never thought a technology could do. And when you have that, you just start to think about, oh my God, we're going to have massive business change, massive social change, massive political change. And so it's just it's a conversation that I think the rest of the country's not having. And I will say a lot of people here are trying to figure out, how do we have that conversation? How do we bring people along? Because they understand, even if they profit off of it, if you're a company and you're making more money, but everyone's scared of it, and there's a big political and social reaction to it, and you have more anxiety and maybe even social turmoil, that doesn't benefit anybody. So it's just like the level of just like mystery and thought and wonderment and fear. I just can't recall a period like this in 30 years.
You say there's one thing everybody wants to talk about, AI. My experience so far is that there's two things that everybody wants to talk about. There's AI, and there's the guy who's about to arrive in town as we're sitting here, President Trump. To me, I've been to a couple of these, and I think part of what makes this week feel genuinely interesting is that you've got a president who is fighting with a bunch of the people he's about to meet with before he shows up at Davos. This is usually an arena for a kind of groupthink to some degree. The companies, the European leaders, a lot of them are singing the same tune when they get on stage. We have President Trump coming. He's going to come trash the whole Davos set when he gets here. But also he's going to get behind the scenes and have some pretty consequential meetings on Greenland, Ukraine, Gaza. What do you think the Trump factor brings to the table here this week?
Yeah, it's funny now that you're saying that. Like in the past, like Davos is interesting, but it's kind of sleepy. And I think it's the energy comes from the AI stuff we just talked about, but it's also knowing like the unpredictability of Donald Trump is blowing into town, meeting with the world leaders, meeting with CEOs, doing a speech to everybody. Everyone knows it's going to be provocative. He's going to challenge the people that are inside of the room. What's interesting, though, is last year when we were here, everybody wanted you to demystify Trump. Everybody wanted us to explain him. Everyone wanted to basically wanted you as their therapist to reassure them that everything's going to be okay. Now, collectively, business kind of reacts like a shrug. Think about it. If you had said a year ago that the President of the United States is going to declare de facto war on Greenland, threaten to break up NATO, to put tariffs on the most lucrative market outside of the United States, all of Europe, and that there'd be almost no market reaction, unthinkable. Well, why do you have no market reaction? You have no market reaction because it's all kind of the chaos is factored in. People realize that even if he does something that seems wild and absurd and history shattering and economic breaking, that so far that hasn't happened. They've become almost numb to it. And so we'll see. But I think he's gonna put on a show when he comes in. He wants to put on a show. I think he wants to be provocative. I think he wants to be seen as the president of the world. I think his ambitions. You've written a lot about this. You've yourself written with Barack. You've written about it. Like there's just his ambitions are so global in nature, and there is like a conquest mentality brewing inside even MAGA, which we've written about. This idea that even though they wanted to be American first, they kind of like the idea that if we're owning our hemisphere, that there's a certain a logic to it, even for MAGA, even though there's an illogic to it for a bunch of reasons. But for his base and for him, they kind of see hemispherical dominance as like something they should do.
Jim, we're running out of time. So one last question about you. You've come here a couple times, I think, but if, maybe 2-3 years ago, I would have pegged you as a Davos skeptic, maybe a little bit. Has this place won you over? Do you think it's the utility for you in coming here is what you need it to be?
Well, I'm an introvert. They make you meet with like 20 people per day, so that would always be the obstacle. But it's not like skepticism, pessimism. It's like, is something happening? Like there's something real happening. And I think with AI being such a live and kind of mysterious topic, it's much more illuminating this time around. And there's a seriousness, there's an urgency that wasn't here. And so listen, whenever you convene smart people, can you have really good conversations that are good for your business, good for, in our case, for readers. So if that's the measuring stick, it's been an extremely effective trip for us and hopefully trip for our readers, because then we end up with, I think, a better, broader, more panoramic view of what's happening across business, media, technology, politics, so that we can then translate that for readers.
All right, Jim, I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much for your time. Next up, Axios publisher, Nick Johnston.
Hello from Davos, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnston, the publisher of Axios. We've had a great week of conversations here on the Promenade. And, of course, big thanks to all of our partners that have made this possible, especially Qualcomm, which has been hosting us here for the entire week, right in the center of Davos, where all the action is. And I'm very excited to be here with Nakul Duggal, EVP Group GM, Automotive, Industrial, and Embedded IoT and Robotics. Nakul, good to see you.
Very nice to meet you, Nick.
This is your first Davos, so welcome to the Alps. As you've been wandering the Promenade, taking all these meetings, what stood out to you this year?
Thanks for having me. I think AI is on everybody's mind. I think that was the one thing that stood out. I met with a number of different folks from various parts of the world, various industries, and everybody's not just talking about it, but thinking about what it means to their business, what it means to their ecosystem. So that was actually quite compelling.
And I've found a lot in the conversations here at Qualcomm House, the AI conversation, which has been going on for a couple of years, beginning to shift a little bit from talking about it to like, what are we actually going to do about it that makes a difference? I wonder if you've seen something similar.
So look, I think there has been a lot of investment going into AI, into data centers, into the energy needed to be able to build out the capacity. What I was actually quite excited to hear about in all the conversations I had was, how will industries and enterprises evolve to start to use the technology at scale? And that, I think, is starting to happen, but there isn't necessarily a preset recipe just as yet. We are a company that builds a lot of products that live at the edge of the network, at the endpoint of the network. And we do certainly see a theme where there is a lot of opportunity in terms of physical AI, in terms of being able to be situationally aware, in terms of being able to come up with better outcomes, because AI is going to be able to bring you much closer to those outcomes because the edge has now become very intelligent. That's what we are spending a lot of our time on, and that's kind of what I tried to glean from the number of conversations I had.
What's interesting as this ideas of AI enter into the real world is that it becomes less theoretical and maybe more specific. Are there actual examples of these kinds of deployments that you're encountering as you've talked to folks here?
There are. I'll give you a couple. We partnered with Aramco about 18 months ago. We wanted to pick a customer that we could learn from that had very complicated business, high-scale business in terms of digital transformation. And the last year that we've spent with them has all been about how do you actually make the endpoint work for you as you start to deploy technology at the edge. There are a large number of complexities in such businesses. One big complexity is the labor force. You have the labor force that is gaining more experience but is leaving those jobs, and you don't necessarily have a lot of new labor coming in that will take that over. How do you keep that expertise inside the organization? The other one is, frankly, just safety and security. How do you prevent accidents? How do you get early awareness of things that are going to happen when you connect multiple dots? I live in San Diego. We have a big energy company, Sempra Energy. They have done a lot of work in being able to predict weather patterns, understand where their high voltage lines are, and look for accidents before they happen, such that they can prevent fires, such that they can prevent loss of life. So all of this that is happening can only happen when you start to connect a lot of different dots. You have to deploy it at the edge in terms of being able to get the maximum value out of it. And that's what we spend a lot of time on.
So what's interesting about this is, like, this isn't theory. These are people out in the field, in industrial areas, like carrying devices with this technology that we're learning from.
And it's not just people, it's also the infrastructure that's deployed. So you can make the infrastructure more intelligent. One thing that, there has been a lot of talk about, which is generative AI, LLMs, etc. But machine learning, when it starts to get deployed at the edge, is actually very powerful. If you look at robotics, for example, a tremendous amount of physical automation of things that you want to be able to do, whether it's high risk, it's something that you don't want a human to be involved in. You now have the technology available to be able to create the right types of end products. And that's where we are starting to see a massive amount of pace pick up in terms of how enterprises are embracing this.
Let's spin this forward and look ahead. If we can entice you back to Davos again next year, what do you see in the future? What are we talking about in 2027?
I think for us, 26 is going to be about what is the pace at which enterprises actually start to build out a recipe to implement a lot of the investments that have been made. We are particularly excited about education around AI, being able to get enterprises to actually be able to adopt the capability, train their workforce. We recently acquired Arduino, which is one of the world's largest developer ecosystems. We're working with them to make all of their products AI ready, such that we can help enterprises help their workforce become much more AI savvy. The other piece we're going to spend a lot of time on is really working with a variety of industries in creating blueprints and creating recipes for how to go implement this at scale. So this was a busy Davos, being my first one. I expect the next one to be really exciting. I feel like there's a lot that we will actually start to see in action.
We hope to see you again next year and catch up on all these incredible trends. Nakul, thanks so much for spending the time here.
Thank you very much. Nice to
and
meet
stick
you.
around. We've got a lot more conversations from right here on the Promenade in Davos.